Hello, everyone. For this presentation, I'll be discussing judge versus jury sentencing in Texas. Texas is one of the few states that allows defendants to choose whether they want to be sentenced by a judge or by a courtroom full of jury. I'll go over the advantages of both options, explain my opinion on whether Texas should keep the system, and then I'll end with a couple of questions that I thought of myself that I think would be interesting to research. So the first slide, we have judges. I have a couple of little bullet points that I guess summarize everything. Enhanced legal education. Of course, they spend many years, studying the law consistently in a courtroom. It's nothing out of the ordinary that they spend their day to day inside a courtroom, listening to different cases and different outcomes and just learning as they go. Better discretion, history, and severity. So basically, they're trained enough to put two and two together to come out with a better outcome for the offenders. I'm sorry. And this goes in hand in tune with the law. So like I said, they kind of know how to put two and two together to essentially come out with the best sentencing for this specific offender. All cases will be different. And then I have this little quote from within the textbook, basically just saying the judge has more discretion. So this gives them more of an opportunity to sentence something that fits the individual offender. And I just think basically that's the most of the benefits within this. I guess you could argue that maybe the outcomes can be more strictly to what's set in stone already, as opposed to the jury, which I'll get into it later. Well, actually, we can switch to it right now. So we have the jury and its advantages. So we have community based. So it's not, something dictated by the system or professional, I guess you could say. Then we have sympathetic towards cases. Again, it's more of a diverse view on your case. This isn't it's not something regulated by someone within the system who are trained and prone to not feel much sympathy compared to everyday people that are appointed to jury. And then it's better overall voting decision rather than set by one. So like I said, you could argue that you have much of a better chance of getting a lighter sentence with a jury just because so many people will tend to feel more sympathy towards you. Well, I guess very case dependent, but with this constant thought in the back of your head that, this is the law. They have laws set in place to if you do this, you're going to get X amount of years, or you know what I mean? And then you have the right to choose the judge or jury, which I guess that's the benefit for you. You got to choose, I guess, who comes out with your sentencing. And then another quote from the textbook: the jury and or judge weigh the evidence and decide whether the defendant should be sentenced to death or should receive a lesser sentence. So like I said, in theory, they're both the same. When it comes to sentencing, I guess it's just one versus multiple. That's where you would have to kind of make your decision on which you think is best for you. And going down to my opinion is to keep both the judge and the jury, just because I guess it creates this fairness across. Well, for you at least, it's better in your argument, which you prefer. And like I said, you can argue that a judge could give you a lighter sentence or a jury could give you a lighter sentence. It just depends on you. Because every case is different, just like I said right there in the second bullet. There's a lot of I guess talks about where each case will have the same outcome if it's the same offense or whatever. And so some people will be intimidated by this, and like I said, a law that's if you do A, you get X amount of years or whatever. So I guess that's more peace of mind for you and betters your case if you want to choose a jury. Like I said, fairness in choosing your setup. You choose your way of getting sentenced. Balance between both law and community. So a judge will always be more strictly towards the law, I feel like. And again, that doesn't even mean they won't have any sympathy for you or feel any type of emotions towards you. Of course, judges see these things, like I said, day to day. I think they just have a better way of using their discretion on, like I said, tying everything together rather than the community just kind of sentencing you off of their perspective and opinion. Because I think I made this argument before on on one of the discussion posts, that because the juries are like jury duty, everyone is elected at such a random time, and prior to them showing up to the courts, they don't have any like education on the law, or like what to expect, or like a little rundown, like a pre-trials, or you know what I mean, something to prepare them to make such a decision on someone's, like like sentencing, or like something that could affect someone's life so much. So that's what I mean by when I say community, and how a judge will lean more towards the law side, because the reason they're there is because they've spent years and years learning the law book by book. You know what I mean? As opposed to like your everyday person working different things or from a different place. So yes, you get more of a diverse opinion, and a more diverse like sentencing and whatnot. I would just basically depend on what you choose. You could argue that judges are more consistent in their sentencing, just because of the whole like knowing about the law and stuff like that. A jury, like I said, more community, more diverse, could benefit to each their own. And then moving on to the future research. And so, like I said, what I was bringing up earlier is that you could argue, juries tend to give lighter sentences, or judges tend to give harsher sentences. So my first one would be the outcome ratios between jury handled cases and judge handled cases. I guess in like a certain amount of time, or maybe you can research this now, like within like a five consistent years of judge and jury trials, match out the ratios and see which appear to give you lighter sentences or heavier sentences. And then, well, I guess the second question goes in hand into that, which side gives you lighter sentences. And I think this would be really interesting to figure out. Maybe this is something that could persuade someone to choose a side, depending like whenever they need to make this choice, whether judge or jury.